As a black woman,
It's good. It's good. Right.
as a black woman,
Yeah.
as a black woman living in Alberta, I think one of the main concerns, and that's also one of the things that made us flee from our countries, to come to Canada, in particularly to Alberta. One of the concerns that we have is the issue of safety. There's been a growing, rate of crime in Alberta where we feel our children are not safe. So what would you do differently from what is being done right now?
Yeah.
What strategy do you have as NDP to ensure that our children are safe in this part of, Canada? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. So public safety is top of mind. We're seeing it out everywhere. We're hearing that crime is on the rise. We're worried about our streets being safe. We're gonna hire more cops, so 100 specifically for Edmonton. But alongside those cops, we're gonna hire social workers to make sure that we're dealing with the underlying issue. Because we know not every single police call is going to need an arrest or it's going to need, police intervention. It might be that somebody is using substances. It could be that they are unruly because they're drunk or they're high or whatever. And we need social workers to step in and intervene. Not every call requires police intervention, but we also know that public safety is top of mind. And that is our commitment, to make sure that there's more folks on the street working on these issues. We know that petty crime is up because life is unaffordable. People are turning to petty theft, break-and-enters, even in vehicles, they're going into vehicles to take things that they see of value. And it's because life is so unaffordable. We're going to get more folks in homes, so that way they're no longer turning to theft to be able to meet their basic needs. We're going to make sure that this comprehensive, holistic approach to addressing the needs of individuals that are facing the hardest times of their lives, which is what is, in my view, the crux of the issue. It's that people are struggling, and when people aren't supported, they turn to that crime. When you have a government that doesn't care about people, this is the responding thing. It's that folks turn to crime because there's nothing else left for them. And when we're not supporting people, that's why that happens. So our commitment isn't just focused on hiring those police and those social workers, it's a whole of approach. That's in my way, in our traditional ways of approaching things. You have to look at it holistically. You have to look at every part of that. Is there a different component at play here? Yes, affordability. People are struggling to make ends meet, and so they're going to turn to crime. When we talk about domestic abuse in households, we have to address that as well, and that is what I know our NDP is committed to do, is identifying it and working with our partners to ensure that we address it in a very good way. Because we know that breakdowns in relationships happen, but we also need to help support every side, both the victim, and we also need to know if there's a mental health component to that abuse. I'll be quite frank, I grew up in a household of domestic abuse. I heard it, I lived it, and I know that when we're facing that situation, I'm lucky my mom was able to get out. But not every situation, it allows for that kind of safety. And when we're talking about safety, we have to make sure we look at every aspect of a person's safety. It's not just the rise in thefts. It's not just the rise of break-in and enters. It's a whole holistic approach that we have to take and know what the root is. So I thank you for that question. I hope I answered that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My name is Victor Brandy. As you have already stated, that the NDP has been doing a lot and that you explained to us, but I have much specific concern about disabled people and connection to their accessibility. Accessible inside the facilities, even shops. Accessible even to come into this building. I had a problem with that around.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere had to come and carry me. So, and at the same time with other housing, where we find difficult to rent or to get into a house, because if the house is accessible, it can't be affordable. So what could the NDP do specifically in that things? And one thing not to forget, the sidewalk. I moved recently from Ontario to Toronto to Edmonton about 10 months ago. That here, most of the roads still the sidewalk on one side of the road. So as a disabled person on wheelchair, for me to go to other side, I cannot cross this road here. I have to go to get the road crossed somewhere, which my scooter may be using electricity. I will run short of power somewhere there. I cannot get where I want to go. So this concern need to be addressed, and what is NDP going to do?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that question. So a lot of what you brought up, municipal issues, so that's municipal thing that they would address, but we would work with our municipal partners. What I want to assure you is that when we talk about every single Albertan, it's not just abled, it's also including disabled folks. We have a disability caucus that does a lot of work internally with our party to make sure that folks like you are properly supported. And we're hearing it every day, whether that's issues with being able to access spaces, whether that's businesses or public spaces, or even in private homes. We hear that, we know that that's an issue. We are providing for, I don't know if you qualify, you look quite like a young man, but it's, we have a seniors home renovation grant that we're going to be putting in place, which might be accessible and changeable to folks with disabilities. We can modify that so that if you have mobility issues with your home, we can make those changes. I lived in Toronto for a brief moment as well, and I know how easily and accessible and walkable all of the streets are. There's sidewalks everywhere, there's off-ramps, there's ramps into buildings and everything. And I know that that is an issue here in Edmonton. I've lived here my whole life as well. Briefly moved to Toronto for law school, and then I came back. And in that moment, I knew that, okay, well, our city isn't a walkable city, and that is a problem. I'll continue working with our municipal partners and to make sure that those types of things are dealt with. Because every Albertan includes folks that are experiencing disabilities. We know that, we understand that. And we need to make sure that you're supported. So that credit might be able to be included for you. But again, you do look like a young man, so I don't want to say that it's probably not for you because it's for seniors, but I'll see what I can do. No way. No way. But we'll maybe, if I can take your contact details, I'll follow up with you as well to make sure we can put you in touch with the right programming, because when we are government, every single Albertan, when I say that, I'm not just saying that to mislead you. Every single Albertan is counted in this. Because we have a disability caucus, because we have folks that work with us every day that tell us of these issues. And we will continue moving that needle forward, so in that way you feel supported here in the province, but also so that other folks that are experiencing similar situations are able to be properly supported. Because in Alberta in 2023, we shouldn't have inaccessible spaces. We shouldn't have sidewalks on one side where you can only access if you have a ramp, or if it's only on one side of your street. Every public space that we have should be accessible, in my view. And I'll continue working with our municipal partners too to ensure that that is properly funded and addressed, so that way you can have a good quality of life in this city.
Can I have another job? Or somebody? Sorry, I'm not going to manipulate the whole sitting. Anyways, I have a lot to share. The other thing is the jobs for migrants, professional immigrants who have qualifications, even Canadian credentials, but still they find it difficult to get in. And to me, it looks like there's drainage of abilities and qualifications and mental abilities from other places and come and dump them here. So what does NDP have to do with that?
Thank you for setting me up for that one. That was really good, because we're going to be identifying foreign credentials. That's our thing that we're going to do right in our first 100 days, because we know we have a shortage of doctors, we know we have a shortage of nurses, we have a shortage of educators. We want to make sure that if you have credentials from wherever you come from in this wonderful world, you will be able to use them here. Because we know that we have tons of brilliant folks that are not able to use their transferable skills here. They're driving Ubers, they're working in retail, when they could be working in our hospitals, they could be working in our schools, they could be working in our shops, they could be doing so much more. And we know that that's an issue because we have a lot of folks that come from different parts of the world within our diverse team. And they tell us, like I said, we're sitting with our community, we're talking, and we know that this is an issue. We have a shortage of doctors, like I said. How do we address that? Well, let's identify those doctors that are trained abroad and can come here and work and fill those vacancies and get people family doctors. Say if you want a family doctor from your community, you can get a family doctor from your community, and we need that. We need that so desperately. So thank you so much for mentioning that. It's actually top of my list, but I somehow missed that. So I appreciate you setting me up to be able to mention that. Thank you.
Just one more.
Yeah. No, I'm here all day.
Okay, so based on the theme for today, we're talking about the issue of racism within Alberta here, and I think most of you will agree with me that the racism, the type of racism that we have in Canada is not the same like the one in the U.S. Because in the U.S. you can walk on the street and somebody can confront you and actually tell you that they don't like you because you're whatever color you are. But now here, I think one of the most interesting things is that it's embedded within institutions, institutional racism. How is NDP going to handle the issue of institutional racism? Because I would rather deal with racism where somebody can tell me right on my face that I don't like you because you're a black woman. But for somebody to embed, racism within an institution where I'm not able to see it, physically, but then, the way I'm treated is embedded within that particular system. So how are you going to handle that as NDP? Okay.
Thank you. Great question.
Before you answer, can I just
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you. It's a very nice presentation. I just want to add on top what she's talking about. I'm really pleased to get a copy of our presentations today. It really touches on what she's talking about. And I have a very real kind of story about that I shared in the morning. I'm so sorry I missed that presentation. But what happened to me specifically in school, I'm kind of representing most of the people in here. Our friend, our colleague Victor is a doctor. I have those friends who are lawyers and different kind of educational background in Canada. But whenever you go, especially in Alberta, in this educational institution, what you get is they need you to speak fluent English speakers. But we cannot change our accent. We cannot change the way we speak. They have to understand we do speak another 5 or 6 languages. But I cannot be fluent as someone who is a native speaker of English. And that is the exactly words that I get when I came to Canada. I have a dream. And the Canadian government is a smart government that selects very brilliant people around the world. They bring them in here, they throw them in the garbage. That's what I feel, and that's what everybody is feeling. I'm one of the chosen people. All of us were chosen to come in here because of our educational background, because of our own security clearance that we went through. But once we came in here, what we do is housekeeping. What we do is a low-paying jobs. Even if we need to go to educational institution, what we usually face is that I will just cut. You need to upgrade your English. And there was another word for that, you are a second language speaker to English. That's the words that we are getting from the educational institution. I'm just now asking, what is the role of the NDP in changing this systemic institution?
Yeah, and these are really, really good questions and very loaded because that is the big question that has been, I guess, pervading our entire society for at least a decade, if not longer, because we're finally standing up. We're finally saying enough. We're tired of this. Our people have experienced far too much of this systemic or institutional racism, and we have to address it. And I mentioned earlier in my remarks that we will set up the first of its kind in this province, the Anti-Racism Act, which will establish an anti-racism office to deal with these types of things. My people have accents, also like very thick, especially if you're up north in northern Alberta. When they come to town, we talk about, we make this joke, it's a town voice. I use my town voice in speaking engagements like this because it's clear and it's not fair, because when I grew up on the res, I have a really thick accent when I'm home. You can ask my colleague over here, when I'm at Indigenous events, I have a different accent and I have a way different cadence of carrying myself. And we all know that we do that for protection. We do it to fit in. And that is not acceptable to me. That is unfortunate that we have in today a colonial aspect of knowing that, okay, well, we have to speak the English the best way possible. And that is not fair. In a country like ours, in a province that celebrates its diversity, that celebrates multiculturalism, we should be proud of the accents that we have. We should be able to use them in our spaces of education, of learning, of working. We shouldn't be admonished or punished because we came here and have a different way of speaking than other people. We should be able to use what language we have and what English we have to be able to support our communities. And you're right, that is something that we will have to work on, but that is something our anti-racism office can address. It can address the inequalities in hiring, the inequalities of systemic racism, of going to the doctor and the doctor not understanding us because they don't want to learn the way that our communities work. And that is not fair to our communities. That is hurting our children. That is hurting our brothers and sisters. And we have to stand up against it. But the only way we can do that is if our communities, our mutual communities of beautiful diversity stand together. That is where our strength lays. Is your community and my community standing together to address this? Because we're all facing it in different ways. The underlying issue is colonialism. It's understanding that there's this idea of white superiority, that there's good English versus bad English. It needs to be addressed, and the only way we can do that is by establishing this anti-racism office and establishing an anti-racism act to collect this data, to talk about these types of things, so that our kids can live in a better Alberta than we are right now. And that is my commitment to you. So thank you. I do have to get going. Door knocking has to happen. We need to go and change minds, get people out to vote. And if you have not voted yet, advanced ballots are open today, polling stations. There's just one right over here at, I think, right over here. Yeah, right here. Go, if you're done, if you haven't voted today, go, just show your ID. If you don't have your ID, you can use your bank statements, you can use any piece of mail that is an official letterhead with your name and address on it. So please go vote. And if you can't vote, then your Monday is election day, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please go. Thank you so much, everyone. Much love to you all. Don't run away first. We have one more question for you. This is the last. We are not taking it hard on you.
Two questions.
It's supposed to be for you all, the candidate, Liberal, UPC, and we're the only one that showed up? Yeah, unfortunately just you, so we're gonna take the news.
I think that speaks volume, folks.
I'll ask three questions for you. One has been already answered, answered kind of, and also asked, but two are still there. One is, we have people who studied here in Alberta, in a college, in Northwest College, in University of Calgary, in CDI college, in University of Alberta, but they are still undermined because two things. Because of their color, but most likely because of their last name or their name. For example, my name is Bakote. Okay, so once you see in your office that my name is Bakote or Bako or anything, so typically you will just take the resume and put it in a garbage bin. So how are you going to address that? This is not just for you, the NDP, but anyone who's going to come tomorrow to be our government. That's one question. Second question is, we have a lot of homeless nowadays, which I've never seen ever before in my entire life since I stepped here in Edmonton.
We have homeless just even as the riders, bus riders, we are scared of getting to the bus. We have security guards, but they are not enough to do much more to secure the place. They have, they can still do that, but they don't have the ability to have the manpower to do their job. What they're going to do about that? I wasn't homeless, but I kind of like tried to be homeless sometime back in Ontario, in Toronto in particular, where I kind of like mixed up with the homeless guys, and I ended up going to sleep in one of the shelters. It's a true story in Ontario, and I noticed that some of these homeless, they are not really homeless. They have PhDs. Some of them are doctors. Leave alone like the immigrant who just came. But some of these people, they were born and raised here, but they end up being homeless because of either they are being discriminated against, or they just kind of like don't have the ability to afford paying the rent, or they just kind of like have domestic violence at home, either by their wife and then they end up on the street, or by their husband and also they end up on the street. So how are you as a government going to address that? My third and final pledge is not something that's questionable. There's a war that's been going on in Sudan for the past 1 month and a half now. And it has no difference between it and the one which was in Afghanistan or Syria. But I believe, I'm not talking about because I'm African-Canadian or African-American, but what I'm seeing in Sudan is way too much than the one in Syria or the one in Afghanistan. I'm not talking about Sudanese, but our job as a life at zero is to be able to sponsor refugees. Now we have a lot of, there are a lot of refugees in Sudan, all over Sudan, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, from South Sudan, from Congo, from Central Africa, you name it, even from Syria itself and from Yemen. So as a government, be it NDP, UCP, I'm not saying that talk about on behalf of the UCP or Liberal, but the question goes to you all as a candidate. What are you going to be able to do for those trapped refugees? First of all, they flee their country because of the security in their country, or because anything that happened to them in their country. Now, the sick refugees, which Sudan used to be a haven for refugees, but now they get trapped between the war. They don't have nowhere to go. Whether to go back to their home country or go anywhere. If you go to South Sudan is insecure. If you go to Ethiopia is insecure. There's a war going on there. If you go to Eritrea, it's another problem. Eritreans are not allowed to go to Ethiopia, even if you're a refugee. Ethiopians are not allowed to go to Eritrea, even if you're a refugee. So, what can NDP or the government do for such people?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll address them in turn, if that's okay. Bukote, I'll go 1, 2, 3, if that's okay. For the first one, about the name thing, I'm an employment lawyer, and I've been doing this for a long time now. I've learned the ins and outs of how employers can do that. And it happens not only to your people, but also my people. If somebody has the last name Little Chief, they're not getting hired. Their resume is going to be passed off. And I know that that's an issue. One way that we can work on it, and I can't make this policy commitment, but one idea that I do have is to address it through employment law. By making sure employers are equitable. If they get an application, they must review it. But there's only so much you can do to make private employers do that kind of stuff. And employment law is one way of doing it. Strengthening our labor laws, ensuring folks are supported in the workplace, so then that way they don't experience that kind of racism. Because that's a systemic racism type of thing. It's one that you don't see, it's one you don't hear, but you know that it is there. because it exists, because our people are not getting hired in these roles. So I'll commit to working on that because I know it happens to my people as well. To your second point about folks experiencing houselessness and the security issues I think that you're also bringing up, we need to get folks housed. That's really what it comes down to. We know that this underlying issue of affordability, like I mentioned before when the other question came up earlier, we have unprecedented amount of folks experiencing houselessness or living rough. Unprecedented. This is the most we've had on our streets in a very long time. I would say even likely from the 30s, when we knew the Depression was at its height. And people are struggling. How do we fix that? By supporting them, getting folks housing and wraparound services. Because we know if we're putting a houseless person that has lived their entire life on the streets, they're not going to know what to do with that space. They're not going to know what to pay their utility bills or their rent bills. They're not going to know to clean their house regularly. These are soft skills that we pick up by living in homes of our own, by being taught these skills as we're growing up. And a lot of folks that are living on the streets don't get that opportunity. My partner is a social worker. He works with the people facing the worst experiences of their life on the streets, addicted to substances, living very rough. And when we're talking about making sure that they're supported, we have to make sure that they have every single service that's available to them to ensure they're not experiencing any further victimization by going back to the streets or going to jails, or because jails is just another way of getting people off the streets. And that's not humane, not in this country. People should be given a fair shot. They should be able to live in a home and safe in their own house. And we need to be able to get more folks in that. So our housing strategy will address that. We're going to get 40,000 more Albertans in homes with wraparound services as fast as we possibly can. Because we know, yes, thank you. We know they're struggling. And that's what I keep coming back to. Every single Albertan is going to be supported. Regardless of if you vote for us, regardless if you're a blue person or an orange person, we will support every single one of us. And on the third point, that anecdote that I brought up about that person on the doors, I didn't want to mention where they were from, but he was Sudanese. And he was telling us that story about kids back home, boys actually, young boys, trying to flee, to go to Uganda, to seek refuge as a refugee. And they were gunned down because they were escaping by the government. And we know that this is not just a single isolated incident. This is happening all over. And we need to make sure that those folks are safe. Just as much as people from Ukraine are safe to come here, we should also make sure all people are able to come, regardless of the color of their skin. Because our communities are so strong and our diversity is what makes us stronger. So I would pledge to you that we would commit to that, because I know our team values diversity, values each one of our communities. And if you're working on bringing more refugees, we will work with you. I know Rachel and our team is committed to making sure that everybody can have a safe home. And if Alberta is that safe home, come to Alberta. So thank you for those questions. If you have to get to the doors, I really appreciate it. Oh, one more? Two more. Okay. I keep saying I'm going. Okay. Sorry. Can it be just one and then I gotta go? I'm sorry.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for your patience, and I know you got a campaign to run and doors to kick or to knock. And but thank you for being patient. My question is pretty straightforward. What is NDP doing to increase or to create awareness on civil engagements of Africans in Alberta? And particularly, I think you're running for Edmonton, West Henday.
Yeah.
So is there anything in your platform that will encourage or engage? Because all this, what we are talking about, if we don't participate in our civil engagements in Edmonton or Alberta as general, and the Africans, we cannot have a voice. We cannot make a difference. So my question to you, is NDP having anything on their platform towards this? Thank you.
So, Great question. My answer, every single thing. Our commitment is to have ongoing consultations, to have continued conversations. I know one of our great candidates, Sharif Haji, who was the executive director of the Africa Center, is on our team and will commit to making sure that that happens. Because like I said, I value consultation. You can't make good law and you can't make good policy without knowing what the people that are going to be affected by it are consulted with. So yes, we will. That is our commitment. We'll continue that. And I know Rachel and the team are standing behind that. And how we engage, I don't know what that's going to look like. You tell us. You tell us how that looks like.
We work for you.
You're our bosses. So we will continue working for you and making sure that that happens.
Thank you.
All good?
One more?
One more? Okay, I can do one more. One more.
This is the last one. So yeah, there was an initiative in Calgary whereby they had like community members that used to patrol with police on the streets just to maintain that, the lack of the biasness that sometimes happens with police towards colored people or with discrimination. So that was in Calgary. So I was just wondering, do you guys have something in plans for that in Edmonton?
I haven't heard of that. I do know that we're going to be hiring, for each police officer that we hire, so up to 100 police officers, we're also going to have a social worker, which is kind of similar idea.
Yeah.
Not quite community member, but maybe that is something that we could bring along. And I'll run that up the pipe to see if that is something that we can pilot here. I mean, that is also municipal because Edmonton manages their own police through their board. If that's something that maybe we could talk with the city to implement, sure, I don't see why we wouldn't. It's a great idea. But that social work one is our definite commitment, which will help alleviate making sure that people aren't going to prisons and are getting the support that they actually need. Okay? So thank you. I do have to get going. I
know we are done talks, but we also we have a young newly immigrant. They are not really new, she's not new, but we want you to hear her success.
We did all mic.
Oh, just like your attention on
So I can't really relate, but I saw the poster and it made me think about what we had at school, had a racism presentation, and the woman presenting about it, she said once she was small, she wrote her name for a job applied, and they refused her because she had a black name. And I want to know if you can fake your name. If that happens, or you can just let it go, let it be, or you can just ask someone to change the last name with something else.
That breaks my heart that somebody has to change their name to be able to apply for a job, to work. That really breaks my heart. But my community experience, I don't know if you caught that part, but my community also experiences that. If you have a super indigenous last name, if you have Mahigan Little Chief or Mahigan Napeo, which is in our language very strong and a very important name. But when you're applying for jobs, you get passed over. And I would never ever tell anybody to change their name, ever. You don't want to work with someone ever. You
Change policy is not there.
change policy, change laws, not change names. Yes. You don't want to work there. You don't want to work there. Okay, thank you folks. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out to me or my team if you have anything else.
Before
Thank
you
you.
go, we're going to present you with this one. You will have put it on.
And this is Crystal, everyone. Sorry I didn't introduce her earlier. She's phenomenal. She loves all of our communities just as much. Look at her shirt that she has on right now. That's what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Be in touch, okay? Please reach out.
And thank you so much for the work. And I put some buttons and some information cards for Brooks
Thank you.